I walked into St. Augustine's Catholic Church on a bright Sunday morning in Bradford. 300 people sat quietly during Mass. The priest had just lifted the bread and wine. I stepped forward, grabbed the large wooden crucifix from the altar, and shouted that this was shirk, the worst sin in Islam. I planned to smash it to the floor right there in front of everyone. The moment both my hands closed around the cross, a force hit me like nothing I had ever felt. My entire body locked. I collapsed onto the marble steps. I could not move. I could not speak. Something powerful held me there, and inside my mind a clear voice asked, "Why are you persecuting me?" That voice changed my life forever. My name is Ahmed Hossein. I am 29 years old now. On September 14, 2023, I believed I was about to become a hero for Allah. Instead, I discovered I had spent my whole life following the wrong path. This is my story. I was born in Bradford, England, in a part of the city many locals call Little Pakistan. Streets are lined with halal butchers, Pakistani grocery stores, and mosques on almost every corner. My family lived in a terraced house near Manningham Lane, where most of our neighbors shared the same roots, grandparents who came from Punjab in the 1960s and 1970s to work in the textile mills. Bradford has one of the largest Pakistani communities in Britain. People here often say the city feels more like Lahore than West Yorkshire. My father, Bilal, worked as a taxi driver and served as a respected elder at our local mosque. He led Quran study circles every Thursday evening. My mother, Amina, wore a full niqab whenever she left the house. She kept me and my younger siblings at home for most of our early education. She said the British school system would fill our heads with ideas that we can faith. We learned reading, writing, and basic maths at home. The rest of our time went to religious lessons. From the age of 4, I sat on the living room carpet every evening while my mother taught me Arabic letters. By 6, I could read short surahs. By 10, I had memorized 15 juz of the Quran in perfect tajweed. I still remember the pride on my father's face the first time I recited Surah Al-Baqarah without a single mistake in front of his friends at the mosque. They patted my head and said I would grow up to be a great defender of the deen. Friday prayers were never optional. Every week I walked with my father and brothers to the big central mosque on Howard Street. The building holds over 1,000 men. On Jummah the streets fill with people in shalwar kameez and topis. The adhan echoes across the neighborhood. Inside, rows of men stand shoulder to shoulder. After Salah, my father stayed behind to talk with the imam and other community leaders. I listened quietly and felt special because I belonged to a family that took Islam seriously. Other Pakistani boys my age played football in the park or listened to grime music on their phones. Some started dating girls in secret. I looked down on them. My father called them weak. He said true Muslims must stay separate from the corruption of the West. We did not celebrate birthdays. We did not watch television shows with music or unveiled women. We did not shake hands with the opposite gender. Every rule felt like a wall that kept us pure. At 12, I started leading halaqas for younger boys at the mosque. We sat in a small side room after Maghrib prayer. I read hadiths about the importance of enjoining good and forbidding evil. We talked about how Muslims were under attack around the world. I felt chosen. Most kids wanted to fit in. I wanted to stand out as someone who would never compromise. By 15, my devotion grew stronger. I stopped wearing jeans and switched to loose trousers and long tunics. I grew my beard and kept it untrimmed because that is how the Prophet, peace be upon him, wore his. At school, if I went for exams, I kept my eyes down and prayed in the quiet corner of the library when the time came. Teachers sometimes stared, but I did not care. I believed I carried the honor of Islam on my shoulders. My parents praised me constantly. Relatives visiting from Pakistan called me a real Muslim boy in a country full of fitna. That praise fed me. I started to believe I was different, better, because I was willing to do what others would not. Have you ever felt that kind of certainty? The kind that makes you sure you are on the right side of history and God. That certainty only grew as I got older. In 2019, when I was 25, I began spending time with a small circle of young men who met away from the main mosque. We gathered in a rented room above a takeaway shop on Leeds Road. The group was not registered with any organization. We never talked about violence or bombs. We focused on protecting Islam from cultural erosion. Our leader was a man named Faisal. He had spent 3 years studying in Medina. He spoke with quiet authority. He showed us clips of Buddhist mobs burning Rohingya villages in Myanmar. He played footage of Israeli airstrikes in Gaza. He read news about far-right groups burning Qurans in Sweden and Denmark. Faisal said the root of all this hatred went back centuries. He pointed to the Crusades. He talked about British colonialism that carved up Muslim lands. He said Christianity stood behind most of it. In his view, the cross was not just a symbol. It was a declaration that a man could be God. That idea was shirk, the unforgivable sin. Every church in Bradford displayed crosses. Every cross was a public insult to Tawhid. We needed to do something about it. I worked as a personal trainer at a gym near the city center. Most clients were local lads who wanted bigger arms. I trained them hard, but my real mission was different. I believed Muslims had become soft. We needed strength, physical strength, to defend the Ummah. So I trained myself 6 days a week. I lifted heavy. I practiced Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai with other serious brothers. We quoted hadiths about the Prophet encouraging archery and horsemanship. We said the Ummah had forgotten how to be warriors. Looking back, I see how anger built slowly. Every news story about mosque vandalism or a politician speaking against Islam added fuel. In 2022 and early 2023, the tension in Britain felt higher than ever. Right-wing marches passed close to Muslim areas. People posted videos of Qurans being torn up. Each clip made our discussions more intense. Faisal started saying words that felt dangerous even to us. He said it was time to make a statement. Not with weapons. With courage. Something that would show Christians and everyone else that Muslims would no longer stay silent while their faith was disrespected in public. In the summer of 2019, I started training at a small mixed martial arts gym tucked behind a row of shops on Leeds Road. The owner was a brother from Birmingham who had trained in Thailand. He understood why we came. We were not there to compete in cages or win belts. We wanted to be ready. Ready for what, we never said out loud. But in our minds it was clear, if the day came when Muslims in Britain needed to protect themselves, we would not be weak. I trained 6 days a week. Heavy bag work, sparring, grappling on the mat until my gear was soaked. Between rounds we quoted hadiths. The Prophet said the strong believer is better and more beloved to Allah than the weak believer. We talked about the companions who were warriors. We said modern Muslims had forgotten that legacy. The Ummah had grown comfortable. Too many brothers spent their time on TikTok and PlayStation. We wanted to bring back the spirit of those who built empires. Faisal led our private circle. We met twice a week in a plain room above his cousin's chicken shop. No posters on the walls. Just a few plastic chairs, a whiteboard, and a projector. Faisal spoke slowly. He had memorized books of Aqidah during his time in Medina. He showed us videos that mainstream news rarely covered. Rohingya villages burning in Myanmar. Families fleeing across the border with nothing. Israeli drones over Gaza. He read articles about politicians in Europe calling for bans on hijab and minarets, then he connected the dots. He said these attacks were not random. They came from a long history. The Crusades left scars that never healed. European powers divided the Ottoman lands after World War I. They drew borders that ignored tribes and sections. Britain promised Palestine to both Arabs and Zionists. France took Syria and Lebanon. Italy seized Libya. Every colonial power claimed to bring civilization, but they left destruction. Faisal pointed to the cross. He said Christianity stood at the center of it all. The Crusaders carried crosses on their shields. Missionaries followed colonial armies. Today, he said, the West still uses Christian values as an excuse to interfere in Muslim countries. He showed us clips of American presidents ending speeches with, "God bless America." He called it proof that the West saw itself as the new Crusader state. As every church became a symbol. The cross on top was not just decoration. It was a public statement, a man is God. That statement insulted Tawhid every single day. In Bradford we passed churches on our way to the mosque. St. Augustine stood on Otley Road, tall and proud with its stone walls and tall spire. We drove past it and felt anger rise. Faisal said allowing those symbols to stand unchallenged meant we accepted blasphemy in our own city. The anger grew stronger in 2022 and 2023. News came almost every month. A mosque in Sweden had its windows smashed. A Quran was burned in Denmark by a far-right activist on live stream. In Britain, groups marched through Muslim neighborhoods with banners that read, "Stop the Islamization." One protest came close to Manningham. Police blocked the streets. We watched from the windows of the takeaway shop. Brothers talked about how the police never seemed to protect Muslims the same way. Faisal started using stronger words. He said talk was no longer enough. We needed action that would wake people up. Not harm. Not violence. But something impossible to ignore. He reminded us of stories from the early days of Islam. Companions who stood firm against mockery. He said the cross was the ultimate mockery. It put a created being next to the Creator. One evening in August 2023 we sat in our usual room. Rain tapped against the window. Faisal looked around the circle. 6 of us that night. He spoke quietly. He said the time had come to make a statement. Someone should enter a church during their worship. During the moment they lift their bread and wine. Someone should walk to the front. Take their cross. Remove it. Show the world that Muslims will not stand by while shirk is celebrated openly. The room went still. A few brothers laughed nervously. They thought he was speaking in theory. Testing our commitment. I felt my pulse quicken. Something moved inside me. This was it. This was the bold step I had trained for. The chance to prove I was more than words. I raised my hand. I do it, I said. My voice sounded steady. The others stared. Faisal studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded. Allah guide you, brother. From that night I prepared. I increased my salah to 7 times a day, adding extra nawafil. I fasted Monday and Thursday, plus 3 extra days each week. I read verses about standing against the disbelievers. I memorized lines from Surah Al-Anfal and Surah At-Tawbah. I told myself this act would inspire others. Young Muslims in Bradford would hear what I did. They would see that one man with courage could challenge the symbols of falsehood. I chose St. Augustine's because it was large and central. Sunday morning mass drew families from across the city. Hundreds of people. Maximum witnesses. I pictured the scene. I would walk in calmly. Wait for the right moment. Step forward. Take the cross. Declare the truth of Tawhid. Then leave. Maybe they would shout. Maybe they would call the police. But the message would be sent. I felt no fear. Only certainty. I had spent 29 years building my identity around defending Islam. This was the moment it would all come together. The 3 weeks before September 14th passed in a kind of focused blur. I woke before dawn each day. Far prayer felt deeper than usual. I stood on the prayer mat longer, asking Allah for strength, for courage, for protection. I added voluntary prayers after every Fard Salah. Tahajjud in the early hours became routine. My body grew tired, but my mind stayed sharp. I believed this extra effort would carry me through whatever came. I fasted more than the usual Mondays and Thursdays. 3 additional days each week I went without food or water from dawn until sunset. Hunger sharpened my focus. I told myself it was spiritual fuel. During those long hours I recited verses I had memorized as a child. Surah Al-Anfal spoke of believers who stand firm when the disbelievers gather against them. Surah At-Tawbah warned against taking the disbelievers as allies. I read them slowly, letting the words sink in. I felt them apply directly to what I was about to do. Every evening I reviewed my plan. I would wear plain clothes, dark jeans, a black hoodie, trainers. Nothing flashy. Nothing that would draw attention before the moment. I would arrive early. Park my car a few streets away. Walk the last part on foot so no one would see a vehicle linked to me. I would sit in the back row. Observe. Wait for the Eucharist, the part where the priest lifts the bread and wine. That was the sacred moment for them. The perfect time to act. I chose St. Augustine's Catholic Church on Otley Road for clear reasons. It was one of the largest Catholic churches in the city. The building stood out, tall stone walls, arch windows, a spire that could be seen from several streets away. Sunday morning Mass at 10 o'clock drew a big crowd. Families came from all over Bradford and even from nearby towns. Parents with young children. Older couples. Young adults home from university. Estimates said 300 people or more filled the pews. I wanted witnesses. Lots of them. The more eyes that saw what I did, the louder the message would echo. I drove past the church several times during those weeks. I never went inside. I just sat in my car across the road, engine off, windows cracked. I watched people arrive. Cars pulled up. Families stepped out dressed in their Sunday best. Children held parents' hands. Some carried small prayer books. Others chatted quietly before going in. They looked ordinary. Peaceful. Not like the Crusaders Faisal described. For a second doubt flickered. These people were not burning Qurans. They were not marching against mosques. But I pushed the thought away. It did not matter who they were as individuals. What mattered was the cross on their altar. That cross stood for shirk. Allowing it to remain was allowing falsehood to triumph. Faisal and 3 other brothers knew the plan. They offered to come with me. They said they would sit in different rows. Provide support. Be ready if things went wrong. I refused. This had to be mine alone. My act. My statement. No one else could share the credit or the risk. They respected that. The night before, we met one last time above the chicken shop. Faisal put his hand on my shoulder. Allah is with the patient, he said. Do it with a pure intention. Make Tawhid clear. We may do it together. Then I went home. September 13th was quiet. I told my parents I would go to the gym early Sunday morning. That was normal. They did not ask questions. I spent the evening alone in my room. I read more Quran. I prayed again. I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling. My heart beat steady. No nerves. No second thoughts. I felt calm. Certain. Ready. I had prepared my whole life for this. 29 years of devotion. Years of training. Years of listening to warnings about the enemies of Islam. This was the moment it all led to. I slept for a few hours. The alarm went off at 4:45. I made wudu. Prayed far with extra care. I asked Allah to make the action easy. To protect me. To let the truth of Tawhid shine through what I was about to do. I dressed in the plain clothes I had set out. Hoodie zipped to the neck. Jeans loose enough to move quickly. I ate a small breakfast, dates and water. Then I left the house while the streets were still dark. The drive to Otley Road took 15 minutes. Bradford was quiet on Sunday mornings. Shops closed. Few cars. I parked on a side street 2 blocks away. I locked the car. Walked slowly toward the church. The air felt cool. Leaves moved in the light wind. I could see the spire ahead. People had already started arriving. Families walked up the path. A father carried a toddler on his shoulders. 2 teenage girls laughed about something on a phone. An older woman in a coat held the door for someone behind her. I stood across the road for a few minutes. Watching. Breathing. Then I crossed. I pushed open the heavy wooden door. Inside, the church smelled of polished wood and candle wax. High ceilings. Stained glass windows glowed with morning light. Rows of pews stretched toward the front. The altar stood elevated. A large dark wooden crucifix rested on a stand to the right. The figure of Jesus hung there, carved in detail. Candles burned softly. I walked to the very back row. I sat on the end seat. Close to the aisle. Close to the exit. I pulled the hood slightly forward. I kept my head down. Around me people settled in. Organ music began. Soft. Steady. The priest walked in wearing white vestments. He greeted the congregation. Mass started. I watched everything. People stood. Saturday. Knelt. They followed patterns I did not understand. They sang hymns in English. Children shifted in their seats. Parents whispered to keep them quiet. It all looked so normal. So calm. For the first 20 minutes I felt my certainty hold firm. But something small began to stir. These were not angry people. They were not mocking Islam. They were simply doing what they believed. Just like I did at the mosque. The thought came and went. I pushed it down. I had come too far. I could not stop now. The priest reached the part called the Liturgy of the Eucharist. He spoke words over the bread and wine. Everyone's attention turned forward. This was the moment. My heart pounded hard. I stood up. I started walking down the center aisle. I walked down the center aisle with steady steps. Heads turned. Whispers started. A few people shifted in their seats. I kept my eyes forward. The priest stood at the altar, holding the host high. The congregation was silent, focused on him. I reached the steps leading up to the sanctuary. No one moved to stop me yet. The priest noticed me. His face showed confusion, not anger. He lowered his hand slightly and asked in a calm voice, "Can I help you, son?" I did not answer. I stepped onto the sanctuary floor. The large wooden crucifix stood on its stand to the right of the altar. Dark oak. About 4 feet tall. The carved figure of Jesus looked down, arms outstretched, nails in hands and feet. I reached out with both hands. My fingers closed around the upright beam. The wood felt smooth and cool. Heavy. Solid. Generations old. "This is Shirk," I shouted. My voice echoed off the high stone walls. You worship a man instead of the one true God. This is blasphemy. Allah alone deserves worship. I tightened my grip. I intended to lift the cross and throw it down hard onto the marble floor. I wanted everyone to see it fall. To see Tawhid triumph over falsehood. But the instant my hands fully wrapped around it, everything changed. A force surged through me. Not electricity. Not pain exactly. Something far stronger. Like a presence that entered every muscle, every nerve. My arms locked rigid. My legs buckled. I dropped to my knees on the top step, still clutching the cross. I could not let go. My body shook violently. My vision blurred at the edges. I collapsed forward. The cross fell with me, landing beside me on the marble with a heavy thud. People gasped. Someone screamed. Footsteps rushed toward me. Voices overlapped. Call an ambulance. Is he having a seizure? Give him space. I heard it all clearly, but I could not move. Not a finger. Not my head. My body trembled as if freezing, yet I felt no cold. Only pressure. Immense, invisible pressure holding me in place. Then a voice spoke inside my mind. Not loud. Not angry. Clear and calm. Why are you persecuting me? The words cut straight through every argument I had ever built. This was not the voice of Allah as I had imagined him. This was not the voice of any jinn or demon. This voice carried authority that made my 29 years of certainty feel small and fragile. It asked a simple question, but it carried the weight of someone who knew me completely. Someone I had just tried to hurt. I tried to speak. To shout back. To defend myself. No sound came. My jaw stayed locked. My tongue refused to move. I lay there on the steps, shaking, fully aware, while the church filled with movement around me. The priest knelt beside me. Not the same man who had spoken earlier, the same calm face, gray hair, gentle eyes. He placed a hand on my shoulder. Stay with me, he said softly. We are getting help. He did not shout. He did not accuse. He spoke as if I were one of his own flock who had fallen ill. People gathered. Some prayed out loud. Others held phones, calling emergency services. I could see the cross lying next to me from the corner of my eye. The carved figure of Jesus stared up at the ceiling. Then something else appeared, standing at the altar, as real as the people around me, was a man in simple white robes. His presence filled the entire church. The air grew heavy, pressing on my chest. His eyes met mine. Not with hatred. Not with judgment. With a mixture of deep love and firm correction that shattered every wall I had built. In that moment I knew without doubt who he was. Not Isa, the prophet of Islam. Not a wise teacher. Not a created being. This was Jesus Christ, the one Christians call the Son of God. Alive. Powerful. Divine. Everything I had been taught about him collapsed. The Islam I knew said he was only human, born of Mary, a miracle worker, but never God. Yet here he stood, more real than the stone floor beneath me. More powerful than any experience I had in all my years of prayer and devotion. The shaking continued. Minutes passed that felt like hours. Then the paramedics arrived. They checked my pulse. Shone lights in my eyes. Asked questions I could not answer. Slowly the paralysis eased. I could move my fingers. My arms. My voice returned in weak whispers. They lifted me onto a stretcher. The priest, Father Michael, said he wanted to come with me. The paramedics agreed. I entered the ambulance. He sat beside me. He held my hand. He spoke quietly. You're safe now. I stared at the ceiling of the vehicle. My mind raced. What had just happened? Why had my body failed me at that exact moment? Why had that voice asked why I was persecuting him? Why had I seen Jesus himself? At Bradford Royal Infirmary, doctors ran every test. EEG for brain activity. MRI for any hidden damage. Blood work for drugs or medical conditions. All results normal. No seizure. No stroke. No poison. No explanation. The psychiatrist came next. I told him about the collapse and the shaking. I left out the voice and the vision. He found no sign of mental illness. His report said the event had no clear medical cause. Father Michael stayed for hours. When the doctors discharged me, he offered to drive me home. I almost refused. Pride still clung to me. But his kindness, after what I had done, cracked something inside. I got into his car. On the drive, he did not preach. He did not condemn. He asked gentle questions. About my life. My family. Why I came to the church. I answered honestly. I spoke of my anger. My belief that Christianity insulted Allah. My need to defend Islam. He listened. Then he said words I could not shake. Ahmed, Jesus does not need us to defend him. He is strong enough to defend himself, as you discover today. What he wants is for us to know him. To receive the love he offers freely. Those words stayed with me. In Islam I had always worked to earn Allah's favor. Prayers. Fasting. Deeds. Defense of the faith. The idea of a God who gave love without demanding perfection felt foreign. Yet it also felt true. Especially after what happened on those altar steps. I did not tell my family the full story. I said I fainted at the gym. But I could not hide the change from Faisal and the others. 3 days later we met. I told them everything. The paralysis. The voice. The vision. Their faces hardened. Faisal said it was jinn. Evil spirits sent to deceive me. They said Satan appears in beautiful forms to lead Muslims astray. They told me to read more Quran. To make dua for protection. To wear tawis if needed. I tried their advice for 2 weeks. Extra prayers. Hours of recitation. Avoidance of anything Christian. But the more I tried, the worse the confusion grew. Every time I bowed toward Mecca, I remembered the power that held me when I touched the cross. Every verse I read felt flat compared to the authority in that voice. Nightmares began. I stood before judgment, confident in my Islam, only to hear the words, "I never knew you." I woke sweating, heart racing, terrified that everything I had built was crumbling. The nightmares kept coming. Every few nights I stood before a great throne. I felt confident. I had prayed 5 times a day. I had fasted. I had defended the faith. I expected paradise. Then the voice spoke again. "Come. Final. I never knew you." I woke gasping, sheets soaked in sweat. The fear stayed long after I opened my eyes. What if everything I had built my life on was wrong? I stopped going to the mosque regularly. I made excuses. I avoided Faisal and the group. I felt guilty, but I could not face them. Late at night, when the house was quiet, I searched on my phone. Christian testimonies. Ex-Muslims who had left. I watched with the volume low, screen dimmed. Stories of people who had seen dreams, heard voices, felt a presence that changed everything. Some described Jesus the way I had seen him, alive, powerful, loving. The more I watched, the more questions grew. Father Michael had given me his number at the hospital. For 3 weeks I stared at it in my contacts. Too proud to call. Too scared to stay silent. On October 5, 2023, I dialed. We met at a small coffee shop on the other side of the city. No one would recognize me there. I told him the whole story. My training with the group. My certainty that I was doing all as well. The paralysis. The voice. The vision. The confusion that would not leave. He listened without interrupting. Then he opened a Bible. He read the story of Saul on the road to Damascus. A man who hunted Christians, full of certainty, until Jesus appeared and asked the same question, "Why are you persecuting me?" He read Jesus' words about loving enemies, about praying for those who hurt you. He spoke of a promise: if anyone seeks truth with all their heart, they will find it. I felt the ground shift. Everything I knew was being pulled apart. I had to choose. Stay with the faith of my family, my community, my whole life. Or follow the truth that had chased me down in that church. October 19th came. I sat alone in my bedroom at 2 in the morning. The house slept. I held the Quran in one hand. The small Bible Father Michael had given me in the other. I read side by side. The Quran called Jesus a prophet, honored, born of a virgin, but created like Adam, never God. The Bible said, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Two opposite claims. Both could not be true. The Jesus I had met in the church matched the Bible. Powerful enough to stop me with a touch. Authoritative enough to speak directly to my soul. Loving enough to offer forgiveness instead of demanding more effort. I could not deny it any longer. I fell to my knees. Not facing Mecca. Not performing ritual. Just honest. I prayed out loud in a whisper. Jesus, if you are really God, if you are who the Christians say you are, I stop fighting. I am sorry for trying to destroy your cross. I am sorry for hating your people. I believe you are Lord. Save me. The moment the words left my mouth, something lifted. A weight I had carried for years, trying to earn God's favor, trying to be perfect, trying to prove my worth, disappeared. I felt forgiven. Accepted. Loved. Not because of what I had done. Because of what He had done. I cried quietly for more than an hour. Tears of relief. Tears of freedom I had never known in Islam. The cost came fast. The next morning I told my family. My father's face turned red with rage. He shouted. Then went silent. Cold. "You are no longer my son," he said. "Leave this house within 1 week." My mother wept for days. She believed I was choosing hell. She blamed herself. My younger brothers stared at me like I had betrayed them. Their older brother, their example, had become a traitor. Faisal and the others found out quickly. Messages came. Threats. Kafir. You will face consequences. Anonymous calls warned that apostasy had a price. I knew the risks. In some communities, leaving Islam brings shame, isolation, even danger. I packed a small bag. I left Bradford. I moved to Manchester. Far enough to start over. Close enough to still feel the loss. I lost my job at the gym. The owner was Muslim. Word spread. He said he could not keep someone who had betrayed the faith. Clients left. The atmosphere turned uncomfortable. My old life vanished, but something new began. I found a church in Manchester, Cornerstone Community Church. They welcomed me. No questions about my past. No demands to prove myself. They called me brother because of Christ, not because of performance. For the first time I experienced real community. I met Sarah there. a British woman who had grown up in the church. She listened to my story without fear. She saw my conversion as proof of God's power. We fell in love. We married on June 8, 2024. Father Michael came from Bradford to be there. He told the guests how he had watched Jesus change a man who came to destroy a cross into one who now carried it daily. My family was not present, but 150 Christians celebrated with us. I started volunteering with a ministry that reaches out to Muslims. I share my testimony. My background helps young men who feel the same anger I once felt listen when I speak. In the past year, 7 people have accepted Christ after hearing what happened to me. One was a brother from Faisal's old group. He contacted me in secret. He had questions. He is searching now. In March 2024 I returned to St. Augustine's for the first time. Father Michael invited me to share during Sunday Mass. I stood at the same altar. I looked at the same cross I had tried to smash. I told the congregation everything. How Jesus stopped me twice that day, once physically, once spiritually. The people who had seen me collapse in anger now saw me stand in faith. Many cried. After the service they hugged me. The same hands that had called for help now welcomed me home. I lost a family, a career, a community, a culture that defined me for 29 years. But I gained eternal life. Peace that does not depend on my effort. Love that is given freely. Freedom from endless striving. If God can take someone who tried to break his cross and turn him into someone who carries it with joy, he can change anyone. Jesus is still calling. He called me in the middle of my worst moment. He can call you too.